Today's episode of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast is brought to you by King Arthur Clocks and Jewelry, Bavarian Grill, and Ye Olde Butcher Shop. King Arthur Clocks and Jewelry, a longtime retail and repair shop for, you guessed it, clocks and jewelry. Everything from grandfather clocks to mantle clocks, wall clocks. Hey, if you just need to get the battery in your watch replaced, King Arthur Clocks and Jewelry has you covered. Not only that, they are also a gold and silver exchange. So if you have any gold coins, silver coins that you're looking to trade in for cash on the spot, King Arthur Clocks and Jewelry has you covered there as well. They are located at 1201 North Central Expressway, having served Plano for over 30 years. King Arthur Clocks and Jewelry. And now, let's podcast. Welcome to another edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor at Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Justin Thomas, who's the sports editor for our Denton County papers, as well as Kendrick Johnson, who's the sports editor for the McKinney Courier-Gazette. And gentlemen, let's talk some football. So as I said last week, we're going to start kind of our spring football primer series this week. Mondays are going to be devoted to Class 6A, Thursdays for Class 5A. As we kind of give y'all, we're not going to go full-fledged season preview and all that stuff, but just kind of catching up with our programs as they're immersed in their spring off seasons, just kind of check in and just see how our teams are progressing. So for this, we're going to start with District 6-6A, but not the District 6-6A that is normally referenced on this podcast, because of course realignment has gone down, and most of those 6A schools are now off in Region 2. So taking over, passing the torch on in 6-6A, we now have a district that is comprised of Lewisville ISD, so Flower Mound, Marcus, Hebron, and Lewisville, Coppell, and then Irving ISD, so Irving High, MacArthur, and Nimitz. Justin, you've obviously got plenty of familiarity with at least 5 of these schools. Yeah. So right now is, I believe Flower Mound's the only one that's had their spring games, so a lot of these other ones are still, in the progress, going through their respective springs. So what is kind of going to be, just kind of in these coming weeks, what would you say is the biggest storyline to monitor in this district through the spring?
I guess I just wanted to start kind of with just a little background on this new district, because obviously there are districts. So I guess the first thing that jumps out to you when looking at this district is that only one team in the district last year won a playoff game, and that was Coppell. So Hebron made it, and we lost to Allen in the first round. Lewisville, Marcus, and Flower Mound didn't make it, and then the 3 Irving schools didn't make it. And I guess not being super familiar with the Irving programs, kind of surprised at kind of their futility as of late. Between the 3 of them, Irving, MacArthur, and Nimitz, the last playoffs win was 2003. Wow. So those teams have not.
Back when you were in school.
Yeah, right. I'm even older than that, but college maybe. But yeah, so they haven't had much success. I know they spent the last 2 years in a very tough District 7, with DeSoto.
Oh yeah, Cedar Hill, and Duncanville, really, and all that. Yeah, so it's
tough to even make the playoffs out of that district. But when you look at their kind of competitiveness in that district, it wasn't. Because Irving won 2 games in district. They beat MacArthur and Nimitz. But against those top 5 teams, Cedar Hill, DeSoto, Duncanville, SUP, and Grand Prairie, they went 0-5, and they were outscored 167-23. So
wow, not a good look.
The LISD schools appear to be getting a couple programs that aren't kind of on the level of the Trinities and Byron Nelsons and Bells.
I think it's definitely a more favorable draw for them and Coppell for that matter.
So I guess that's kind of the thing that jumps out to me is, so we're going to have some new faces in the playoffs coming out of this district next year.
With, you can pick whichever program you want to start with. Let's start with, I guess, with Coppell. Like, how different do you envision kind of this change back to Region 1 being for them?
I don't envision it being quite a big change. They still played the same, Metroplex teams in non-district and a lot of teams they're familiar with in the playoffs. So I don't think it's going to change a whole lot. And they're pretty familiar with the Lewisville schools and stuff over the past few years, at least from a logistics and working with those programs and stuff. So I don't see big changes there. With
Coppell, they were kind of the IT program in District 9, 6A and Region 2 these last couple of years, as they then shift back into to Region 1 and 6A. How are the Cowboys kind of looking heading into the?
Well, obviously, the biggest change is going to be at quarterback after 3-year starter Brady McBride graduated and took them to the 3rd round of the playoffs each of the last 2 years. So that's kind of the biggest question mark, you got to say, for Coppell going into the year is how they're going to replace him at quarterback. But they lost 12 all-district players in general, but they still have a lot of talent coming back. Jonathan McGill is one of the premier secondary players, 2-way players in the area.
One of the best. How many 2-way players are even better than Jonathan just in the Dallas area period?
Yes. So and then another defensive back, KJ Liggins, just had an awesome year last season as a freshman. So he's climbing up the recruiting ranks. He's going to be a pretty standout defensive back for them. Blake Jackson had a big year at wide receiver, so they had a lot of talent coming back, but obviously the quarterback makes a go, and they have some big shoes to fill on the offensive line too. Not that there's not returning talent there too, but I would say those are the kind of the biggest question marks coming in the year for Coppell.
I don't know Hebron's roster, but I went out there to see them when I went to go see Darius Snow. They got that hunger for them to be a playoff team. You would think that they did not make the playoffs. They're very fast too.
Well, maybe the hunger of not making the playoffs is because much of their roster wasn't starting last year. They got hit big time by graduation. 16 all-district players graduated from Hebron, so big shoes to fill. But they do have Darius Snow, as you mentioned. They also have the offensive newcomer of the year, Jalen Lott, a Turner transfer at running back, coming back. But like Coppell, Clayton Toon has to be replaced. Kansas signee, or was Kansas signee, but they have to replace him. They lose, 3 big-time wide receivers and Jaron Mitchell. So teams will be able to focus on Oklahoma commit Trajan Bridges a little more out there.
That's a tough thing to do, though.
That's a tough thing to do.
He's a heck of a pass catcher.
It's tougher to focus on him when you have DeAndre Warren and Jaron Mitchell and David Leonti running around out there, as well as Jaden Taylor in the backfield. So all those guys are gone. But Hebron's pretty consistently shown the ability to kind of reload and remain competitive. And as you said, out there at the spring, you thought they looked pretty good and pretty talented, so I'm not really surprised by that at all.
Yeah, they've got a pretty. I was just thinking about the coaching turnover that we've had throughout most of the other Lewisville ISD schools, and there you have Coach Brazel, who's just been, just clicking along, just for such a long time, and that has been such a consistently solid program. It is going to be interesting though to see just kind of how programs like Lewisville and Marcus fare, because I guess now, do you remember last year was the timing of the of the Greg Miller, Jerry Stanford?
Was it maybe June, late May, June? But within a couple weeks of each other, Coach Stanford left Marcus to take the head coaching job at Texas High, and then 2 weeks later, Coach Miller from Lewisville was going there to be the DC. So it
was still a little bit late in the game as far as the offseason.
It was definitely late in the game. Yeah, it was definitely. If I recall, especially at Lewisville after spring camp and everything. I don't think Coach Odell was, if I recall correctly, but 2 teams looking to kind of get back to the playoffs there. As I said, Michael Odell will be in his second year at Lewisville. The Farmers went 2-8 last year. They only won 1 game in district, but especially defensively, I think they're trending up. They have 4 first-team defenders coming back this year, so they do need a new quarterback after Tyler Urban graduated. But kind of like what how they're coming along. The record wasn't great, but they were a little more competitive last year. And
they've been right on the cusp.
I saw them play Boyd last year, and it was a defensive struggle. And Boyd made 1 more play than they did, and that was different. It was like 10-8. But it was like week 2, so I don't know how much they progressed, but I saw them early.
I mean, they didn't progress in the win column. They weren't super competitive against Trinities and South Lakes and Hebrons, but against Flower Mound, Marcus, they hung in there, and I think this defense should be improved and should have them kind of trending up. And then I guess Marcus, one of the big things is they lost a big standout offensive lineman, Justin Osborne.
That's right.
He's a TCU commit, but he's transferred out to the IMG Academy in Florida there, so they lose him. So
who do they play? I always wonder who's IMG.
I believe it's a traveling schedule. They've come to Texas a few times over the years. Remember they had Prestonwood a handful of years ago and DeSoto as well. But now I guess what is it, the word around is schools from Texas just won't play them now because of instances like this, I'm guessing.
I guess, but they still have plenty of talent too. You got Justin Dinka, the standout running back for his senior year. Linebacker Russell Brooks, he just recently committed to LSU. He's one of the top linebackers in the country. So, and then we'll see what the quarterback battle brings this spring, but Rashid Noel kind of split time last year with Xavier Maxwell, and he's back too. So they do have some experience there if that's how they want to go for Kevin Atkinson and the Marauders.
It'll be fascinating just to see how that passing game develops, just to try to ease some of the pressure off of Dinka.
Because last year they just stacked the box, and after non-district, it was
just too much to overcome.
This is the inside of 668, the Adam Schefter of 668. This man knows it all.
With we haven't mentioned Flower Mound. One of the I actually saw at that I was covering the 7-on-7 out of the Grapevine SQT over the weekend, and of our local schools that I had a chance to check out, Flower Mound was one of the more impressive ones that I got to drop in on. I mean, granted, it's only 7-on-7, but I was just curious: is there what kind of are expectations high for their passing game this season?
I think they would be high. Jackson Avery gets hurt in the middle of the season. He was expected to have a really good season for them last year, and he goes down. But Blake Short came in just a sophomore last year and took over, and really, sophomore maybe some turnover issues, but in terms of moving the offense and gaining yards, and he was pretty impressive. He completed over 50% of his passes. I think he had 15 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. Wow. I might have those numbers switched, but either way, the offense was definitely picking up. Jake Welch is back at wide receiver, and then they had a trio of sophomore running backs that they were using last year. So all three of those guys, including Pierce Hudgens and Aaron Dixon, coming back for their junior years.
Okay.
A couple offensive linemen that made the all-district team, so a lot of talent back offensively for Flower Mound.
Okay, so I guess, is it tough to? It feels like just on maybe pedigree, you would just say Hebron probably has the upper hand, at least among Lewisville ISD.
I would say I would give Hebron the edge just on pedigree, like you said, but I mean, I don't see any of those Irving teams, getting out into the playoffs ahead of the Lewisville team.
I don't want to. I mean, is it wrong to say it might be just a 5-team race for 4 playoff spots, or that seems like such a? It's a slight Irving ISD.
And I think I said something about that like in the last couple of years, and then Bell and Byron Nelson made me look like an idiot. But yes, I would say it's a 5-team race for 4 spots with Coppell and then Hebron as the kind of front runners early on.
One other coaching note that I noticed, at least within the district, Coppell assistant head coach Eric De Los Santos recently took the head coaching job at Irving. So you could get a little bit of a student versus the teacher matchup later on this fall. Well, I guess it's just a quick little primer on District 6XA. Just obviously still plenty more to come. These teams still have their summers, and obviously fall practices will get rolling in August. So we will be touch on the district in far greater detail once once fall practice begins in earnest in a couple months. In the meantime, Justin, hey, appreciate you for swinging along.
No problem.
Now as we kind of transition to I guess one of the teams that used to be in District 6XA, McKinney Boyd, and one of their standout, I say playmakers, but then it's very ironic because his nickname is legitimate, is actually the playmaker. The subject of this week's Fast Forward Rewind Student Athlete Spotlight, McKinney Boyd cornerback Plae Wyatt. Kendrick had a chance to swing by Boyd, check out Talk with Plae, just kind of see how he and the Broncos are progressing throughout their offseason, and we will catch up with Plae Wyatt after a word from the sponsor. Today's Student Athlete Spotlight is brought to you by Bavarian Grill, authentic Bavarian food and beer garden. Listed by the Zagat survey as the highest rated German restaurant in Texas for 12 years in a row. 12 years! That's 3 presidential terms. You can enjoy traditional and authentic spring favorites now. Everything from appetizers like slow roasted ham hock and potato pancakes to entrees like bratwurst or breaded schnitzel. Bring your whole family for lunch and dinner. They are open Tuesday through Saturday, located off Parker and Highway 75 in Plano. Bavarian Grill. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
Ken Johnson with Playmaker Wyatt, star finna be junior safety for McKinney Boyd. How's it feel to be one of the older players? You've been young from day one.
I just got a lot of experience on the field now. I know a lot of coverages come easy, and I can actually teach the people. It's better just knowing, like, being the older people and just one of the older people and just knowing the plays and just, teaching other players.
Give some insight to the mindset of this team and how big a deal it is to make the playoffs.
The mindset is different, different with championships. So right now we focus on the defense side of the ball, offense. We're going to score points and all that. So this year we really trying to make a run this year. I feel like we got the team to do it. We got a whole bunch of experience coming back. So I feel like this is the year.
Talk about y'all spring practices, because Coach Drake and Coach Payton them got y'all going at it hard, man. I've been here a couple of times in the spring. It's like a real game out here.
Yeah, everybody out here battling. Everybody out here trying to get better. And I feel like as a unit, we battling every practice, but on the field next year, so it's gonna pay off.
How much do y'all take from y'all started off really slow and then y'all defense and y'all offense came along and y'all had a shot to make the playoffs towards the end? How much y'all take about that? The fact that people counted y'all out and y'all still almost got in there, and now everybody got experience because I got a lot of people coming back.
Well, they still gonna count us out this year too. We watching film of last year all the time, last year in the spring, and so we just getting better, learning from our mistakes, because there's a lot of mistakes, like 1 or 2 plays that could cost us the playoffs. So right now, we're just learning from the mistakes, and we're not going to make them same ones next year.
Talk about the camaraderie that y'all have, because it seems like everybody get along, and it shows in y'all play.
Oh, yeah, everybody getting along now. Everybody, we got, like, brothers. Most of the people been playing like varsity for a long time together. We all been playing on the same team, so we just playing like brothers now. We coming together. It's real easy to talk to each other and, coach each other up. So I know Coach Drake always tell us that championship teams are players led, so that's what we're doing now.
I know it's only been 3 years since y'all went to playoffs, but y'all feel pressure since a lot of y'all haven't made it individually, and the fact that people keep talking about that drought.
I feel like it's pressure on some people coming up, and So I mean, it's the pressure. I mean, the pressure gonna make diamonds. So the people who gonna want to play, they're gonna put the people who want to play in, and it's gonna show in the field. Everybody want to go to the playoffs. Everybody want to go to state championship. So right now we're just working. We just gonna keep grinding for that.
Yeah, on your recruiting front, how's the fact that people showing you all this love, and what are you gonna be doing this summer?
Recruiting, yeah, it's going. I mean, it's going good. It's good that they're showing love and just seeing what I can do. But I'm looking to make a big impact and show people that really I'm the best safety in the country. I promise you that. So that's what I'm trying to show people now.
Give some insight to that work that you put in.
I'm putting in work every day. Hard work pays off. People may be talented, they might be fast, strong and things like that. But I feel like overall, hard work I'm putting in. I mean, I can say it. I'm the best player in the state, best player in the country as far as safety-wise 2020. So. I mean, I don't really think nobody really on my level right now, but I'm going to keep working and keep putting people around.
You talk about leading these groups, so you got your boy Nate Jackson and all them. All y'all coming back. And last year was a big question mark. Nobody other than you knew what to expect because you played as a freshman. But last year, everybody did their thing and showed up and showed out. So how y'all build upon that and be a dominant unit that y'all were? Because once y'all were healthy, y'all made plays. That's a unit.
Yeah, we got a whole bunch of people hurt. I was dealing with ankle injury, Nate dealing with ankle injury. But, we got a whole bunch. He coming back stronger than ever right now. I'm coming back stronger than ever. And our whole defense as a whole unit, we coming back like everybody healthy right now. Everybody playing to the best of their ability. So I feel like we're going to keep putting this work during the rest of spring and, then the rest of the summer. And then we're going to come back next season. I feel like we're going to be the best we've been.
Where that confidence level at?
That confidence is high right now. This work that we're putting in, it should pay off real soon.
And with spring game coming up, what y'all want to get accomplished in the spring game, but other than staying healthy?
We're going to show that our defense probably number one defense in the state. We're going to keep working on the defense side of the ball, and we're just going to show that our defense can stop people in the offense and score points. It should be a battle, though.
And you got a message for people that's still sleeping on the Bowie Broncos?
Yeah, we up next. We coming. All I got to say.
Do you want to give a shout out to Red Nation and your family and stuff that supports you?
Oh yeah, shout out, my pops, he already been there day one. That's all I really got to shout out. My daddy, he's the only one that really been there for me, so that's all I got to shout out now.
Thanks again to Plae Wyatt for taking the time to chat with Kendrick for this week's Fast Forward Rewind Student Athlete Spotlight. So in the meantime, we have subbed out Justin Thomas for Devin Hassan. Devin, who is the sports editor for the Rowlett Lakeshore Times and the Mesquite News. And that is going to segue right into our continued Class 6A Spring Football Primer. We're going to round this out by talking about District 10-6A, whereas we just talked about 6-6A in a district that has an entirely different configuration from the past 2 years. 10-6A has pretty much stayed the same with the exception of the addition of one school. It is still the Garland ISD district with Garland High, Lakeview Centennial, Naaman Forest, North Garland, South Garland, Rowlett, Sachse, and then new to the party, Wylie, after 2 years in 6-6A. So Devin, obviously you've been around this district forever. So how is the, obviously these programs are still in the midst of their spring games are still on the docket. So what has just kind of been your read as you kind of wade into District 10-6A?
Well, you're not going to see a lot of activity from a realignment when you have 7 Garland ISD teams that are tied together. Now, you did see a little bit of a change a couple of years ago when South Garland opted down. Yeah. But I think they kind of realized the mistake, just having them be out there on an island by themselves. So I don't think you're going to see that anymore. Obviously, Wylie brings about a new face, but the big thing I guess going into spring I thought was 10-6A is going to be a lot more wide open. I think next year. Now, I'm not saying it's going to change the order of finish, but I do think there are more question marks coming in. Last year, Sachse was the undisputed favorite. Oh, yeah. They had gone undefeated the year before, and they certainly lived up to the hype coming in, advancing to the regional semifinals for the first time in school history. But if you look, they lost 33 lettermen. And it wasn't just 33 lettermen; these were heavyweights. I mean, this is quarterback Jalen Maiden, who's at Mississippi State, who was the district MVP. This is Christian Cole, who was the Offensive Player of the Year, who's now at Arkansas Tech. Drew Jackson, the wide receiver that's going to Washington State. Calvin Barcott, their outstanding offensive lineman, who's at McKinney State. Tyler Lacey at Oklahoma State on the defensive line. Zach Gilson, UTSA on the defensive line, and obviously Isaiah Humphrey, their outstanding defensive back, who's going to Penn State and was the Defensive Player of the Year. So people are going to graduate seniors every year, but I mean, Sachse has some big shoes to fill with the departure of those guys.
You wonder though just how much the momentum of last season, which was just, program records just almost all across the board, just the momentum that a season like that builds, and just the positive vibes that these kids probably had now heading into the spring. Yeah,
and they raised the bar, and this is a program that's made the playoffs 6 of the last 7 years. So the expectation level is there. Their JV went undefeated last year. Okay. Their freshman was 5-0. 5-1. So just as they've been able to do really over the last 5-6 years, I mean, they can reload rather than rebuild. But still, there's questions that aren't going to be answered until they take the field in the fall.
And that's still, I mean, like you said, they're replacing the shoes of a lot of just college-bound players, which is...
We subbed that Adam Schefter for Mel Kiper Jr. He's going down the list. That's a lot of schools.
With Sachse kind of had their way with most of 10-6A. The only team that gave them, a bit of a test there was Rowlett. Just kind of what was been the kind of the read on the Eagles right now as they go through their spring.
A similar story in the sense that they're replacing a 3-year starter with Preston Weeks graduating. Chase Tupel came in. Preston Weeks got hurt last year. He came in and did a solid job, but again, in very limited snaps. This is a program that's made the playoffs 13 years in a row, but this is one of those years, during that run of 13 in a row, they've had some seasons where they may go 0-4. Last season, for instance, they are 0-4 out of the gate. They have, they take some non-district lumps, and then they get things together in time for district play. And this may be another one of those years, breaking in a new quarterback. They have some nice pieces coming back. Chauncey Amos in the backfield, Sharjay Hunt in very limited action, kind of flashed his potential last year and during his sophomore campaign. Antonio Hull was the newcomer of the year outside of wide receiver. Jerry Evans was also a seasoned wide receiver. So there's whoever gets that starting quarterback job, there are pieces around them, but they also lost a lot on defense. So I think, again, like Sachse, unlike the last couple of years where there's just not as many certainties.
And they'll get to actually break in the start of their season under the bright lights of one of the newest, the newest football stadium in the Metroplex, as they will be them and McKinney board will be the first Friday night game at McKinney ISD Stadium.
12,000 people expected. It won't be the grand opening. The grand opening will be the night before, but it'll be opening weekend. So they're gonna have a new quarterback under the big lights of MISD in the whole state of Texas.
Well, and that should be a fun atmosphere too, because Rowlett generally travels pretty well, and obviously McKinney ISD is going to be packing that place.
It's literally got national attention. I'm at the MA All-Star Weekend. I got Shaquille O'Neal asking me about this stadium.
It's gonna be a festival,
legitly,
but getting back real quick, those two teams, I think, just based on the track record, have been the top two. But again, when I was talking about a little bit more up in the air, is this the year that Lakeview gets, sneaks into one of those top two spots?
They've been close these last
I mean, Lakeview been on ever since Kendall Miller took over. They have been on the upswing, and they've made, they had not made the playoffs since 1995, and they finally broke that drought.
Insiders know. That was my freshman year. I'm a Lakeview alum, so it's cool seeing them actually win games. And I actually saw that they have youngsters. I don't know the names, They have that young running back that's really electric. I saw him last year as a sophomore.
Yeah, he was a track standout. Kamar Wheaton, as a freshman last year.
Oh, he's a freshman.
Yeah, he's just a freshman. Yeah, he was obviously running sub 22, 200 meters times. Last year as a freshman, he didn't start the year on varsity, but 68 carries, 880 yards. So that's just a shade under 13 yards per carry for a freshman, and he's 6'1", he's blazing fast, and he may be one of those difference makers that allows Lakeview to not just make the playoffs for the third year in a row, but make a push for a district title.
It'll be interesting to see just how Wylie kind of mixes into this equation as they progress. I mean, we covered them.
Don't give up on them. They're like the Rowlett. Remember, they'll start off very, very slow, and then you look back, they didn't beat such and such. You look back, they won 14-13 and give them this third week of district, and they're in some crazy tiebreaker towards the end. They hang around,
and they've really kind of developed a reputation for that, not just last year, but over the last decade. You'll see them. You look at the playoff brackets and you see 5-5 Wylie at the end of the 4th seed, and all of a sudden you look up a month later, they're playing in the regional final. It's just they have a lot. Just not obviously having seen them play last year, they have a lot of question marks too. They graduated, I think, 2 all-district running backs, 5 of their top 6 receivers, and in total 9 all-district selections graduated last year. They did return their quarterback, Rashad Dixon, who had a nice season last year.
He began the year kind of under the radar. He wasn't the projected starter coming in because they got Stacy Connor from Bishop Dunn, and Stacy Connor was, I believe, committed at the time to might be UNLV, and then just out of nowhere, just kind of in the middle of the district, you just look and see, wow, okay, who's this Rashad Dixon kid? And he actually, he held up just fine.
Nice throw to that quarterback. He's got good touch.
And Wylie, they show they can compete, but this is where they're more comfortable. This is what they petitioned for 2 years ago, as opposed to being in with all these big behemoth schools over there in the old 6-6A, you know, their enrollment's going to fall right around, you know, all the other Garland ISD schools. It falls right in the middle of that. You know, from a travel standpoint, not that it was a real, you know, they had a lot of travel issues in the past, but you know, they neighbor Sachse, they you know, neighbor Garland. It's just a good fit all the way around. And I think they're a program that, you know, 3-7 last year, but just given that every one of these teams has questions, I think they can come right in and compete for a playoff spot.
They, I think we would say these last 2 years in 6-6A that Wylie was, I mean, they weren't at a massive disadvantage from a sheer like quality of play standpoint.
It's more about depth.
Yeah.
But I was there when they got the first playoff spot. It came down to a yard. They need to stop Matt Gaddick, Mr. 2,000 yards. They stopped him 3 times his junior year, and that's how they got in the playoffs. So I think they had a lot of seniors though on that team.
Yeah, they made the playoffs last year, and not last year, but you know, 2 years ago, 2016. They were right on that, right on the cusp. They actually did. I checked this. They had a 4-2 record against Plae ISD during their 2 years in 6-6A. So
that's three biggest schools in the state.
Yeah, including, I mean, yeah, they went unbeaten against Plano Senior and Plano West, and almost beat Plano East. They lost in overtime last year, so they've shown that they can, you know, despite that enrollment number, they could swing with the heavyweights in the state. So I'm anxious to see kind of how they figure into this equation now, since it does feel like
and they play really good at home for some reason. They're like another team. They're like the Boston Celtics.
Well, don't even get me started on that.
Well, and you know, again, I think Sachse is going to be the team to beat. I mean, they've won 12 straight district games, going back, you know, back-to-back district titles. Rylett's going to be in the mix. I mentioned, you know, Kamar Wheaton in Lakeview. He's just one of several young players that Lakeview has over there.
Quarterback, he's pretty talented too.
Yeah, and Jared Allen had a nice. Jared Adams, not Allen. But and Naaman Forest is also a team. They went 8-3 last year. Marvin Sedbury's done a great job, and they have a very good JV and freshman teams as well. You know, they run that wing tee that it's hard it's hard to prepare for because nobody does it.
They did the old Garland, Joe Martin wing tee.
Oh yeah,
them an old Frisco High.
and which is a reporter's dream because they're done in 2 hours because they have 10, 11-minute drives and they have a stingy defense.
Is that why I seen their scores last year? They gave up maybe 13 points a game, but they only scored like 16 points a game.
Yeah, well they can you know, when they have an advantage, they can run right through you. Now they do have to replace Tyreek James, who was their leading rusher, but they had, you know, the wing tee, you have a stable of backs, and they had 4 other guys that rush for more than 300 yards. And, you know, so it's, you know, Naaman Forest is going to be right there. They're kind of like Lakeview. They've been building, you know, been on that upswing for the last couple of years. So, you know, throw Wylie to the mix, and, you know, South Garland, North Garland have had some tough times. You know, South Garland, they do have, make sure I get his name right, Jaquarian Turner. If that name rings a bell, he's the kid that rushed for 408 yards and 5 touchdowns against W.T. White last year. Wow. That kind of brought the spotlight on South Garland, you know, a bit. But he rushed for 1,700 yards, 20 touchdowns last year. He's going to have the defense's attention because they attempt less than 3 passes a game last year.
Because it was him and Matt Gaddick who were essentially kind of jockeying for that area rushing title in 6A.
But he was essentially a one-man show. I mean, Kevonta Wilson gave him a little bit of support in the ground game, but you know, when you're only attempting 3 passes a game, the defense is going to be focused on you. So if they can put something around him, though, he's the kind of playmaker that he can, you know, if not make the playoffs, at least, you know, factor in it with an upset or two along the way.
See, there you go, folks. What more could you want to know about District 10 6A? And we still got 2-3 months to go before we get going in earnest. Should be fun to see how these teams kind of progress throughout their respective summers. So that'll just about do it for this edition, though, of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast. We're going to continue our spring football primer series on Thursday as we begin to dip our toes into Class 5A. In the meantime, hey, Devin, Kendrick, appreciate y'all for tagging along. Once again, this has been Matt Welch with Star Local Media. Appreciate y'all for checking out this podcast. Y'all enjoy the rest of your week. We will talk to y'all later. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the Star Local Media Sports Podcast, brought to you by Yield Butcher Shop, a meat market and burger joint based in Plano. It's summertime, folks. The temperatures are going to start heating up, and what a better way to break into that summer heat than to break out the grill, do some barbecuing. Well, guess what? Yield Butcher Shop has you covered. They can help you with everything from catering, grilling, barbecuing, or any special occasion, serving the finest cuts of meat from everyday to exotics. They are located at 811 East 15th Street in Plano, open Tuesday through Saturday. A smoking good time since 1974, Ye Olde Butcher Shop.